All right, guys, happy Monday. We are starting week 4. Just a real quick announcement. Since it's Monday, normally I would be posting comments today, but I have a very important meeting here in about 20 minutes. So it will be tomorrow, Tuesday, before I get comments posted. You only have one discussion question from last week and on naturalism, and you only have one this coming week on lesson 6. So you'll have time. We're doing this week. We're doing the contrast between Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois. And that's how the name is pronounced, like Du Bois in the Hood. Um, so this is one of the more straightforward lessons, I think, because a lot of the conflict between the two of them is really more historical than literary. Although I do want you to understand how Washington's autobiography uses elements of the self-made man narrative. The main thing is to remember which author stood for industrial ed and which one advocated higher ed in the two basic positions. The major thing for this week is to get going, preparing if you haven't already, studying for exam parts 1 and 2. They are open till next Tuesday, so give yourself some time. Go over the How to Study guide. It is not a study sheet. It doesn't say, here's the questions that will be on the exam. But it gives you strategies for studying, because that's ultimately what we're working on, is how we study and how we prepare for exams. That said, I just want to go over a few of the types of questions that you might have on there. It's very common for me. Now keep in mind, in exam 1, you have 15 minutes for 10 questions. Keep in mind that I go through your exams and I can check to make sure that you're not flipping off your screen and going through the notes or anything. So you are expected to take the test without notes. Don't even try to use your notes, because you just don't have time. You have about 1:15 for each question. Have a clock there. Go slow. Sometimes when people bomb the exam, I look in there and they've blasted through a 15-minute exam in 3 minutes, and that's just kind of wasting your time. Don't freak out if you don't do well, because we have 22 extra credit points at the end of the term to help you get prepared. What I want you to think about is not so much the content that you're studying, but how you are studying. So it's very typical in the part 1 of each exam for me to ask you basic definitional questions. Which of the following is a characteristic of sentimental literature, or realism, or local color, or which is not? A lot of these questions might be not questions. So slow down, read the question carefully. I will acknowledge there are a couple that are trick questions. They are trick questions in the sense that they contain things that should leap out at you as being factually inaccurate. Just to give you an example of one that is not on the exam, I might have a line in there, something about Wolf going on to the Christian community and the end of the story. And you should be able to recognize right away that that's not what happens, because Wolf in Life in the Iron Mills commits suicide. So that's an example of something that's just factually inaccurate. I could say which of the following is least likely in realism, and I might have something in there about characters being idealized versions of humans, and you would say to yourself, well, that's not accurate, because I know that in realism characters are always types. So if you go down the list of characteristics for each period, the sentimental, the realism, the local color, and naturalism, Go know each of the characteristics, know the content, the style, the effect. I don't think there are really any historical contexts. There are a few questions of, like I might ask you, which of the following is typical, which of the following is accurate about the public response to Daisy Miller, or the public response to Life in the Iron Mills. That's all in the notes. So if you read the notes and you assimilate the notes, you should be able to understand them. Know the definition of local color, novel of manners, all the terms, limited omniscience, the trick ending, the donné, which is the term that uh, is applied to Henry James, that he comes with like the germ of the story. Know the term that William Dean Howells used to describe Henry James, his approach. You, you should be able to get that right off the right out of the notes. What else? Know the character names. There are a couple questions that might ask you to identify which of the following characters does X, Y, or Z. But again, part one is done completely off the notes, the lessons. So go over those. In your own mind, after you've gone over those, try to write out the characteristics of sentimentalism or realism or naturalism, local color. You just want to be able to articulate that information for yourself instead of staring at a piece of paper and assuming because you're looking at it that it's in your head. A little engagement with trying to write these things out will work well. You might also go back through just the questions in each discussion question. That'll help sort of reaffirm the main ideas that we've been looking at. Part two of the exam is reading comprehension. And this is designed to teach you about what you need to do to improve your reading skills. Again, a lot of this stuff is discussed in the notes, but they are questions that are built more around what happens, which characters do this, do that. Now again, I'm not looking for anything obscure. Most of these are who's buried in Grant's tomb. That said, know the characters in all of these stories, know what they do, know basic details like professions of specific characters if they're relevant, know basic facts of the story like which of the four men die in the open boat, know, for example, what all the characters in Uncle Remus stories represent. Know the basic plots, what happens at the end of Springtime Fantasy, what happens at the end of Yellow Wallpaper. The goal here is to make sure that you can, and this is really challenging because we are becoming a post-literate generation, for better or worse, but we still do need reading skills. And part of what reading is about is not just looking at words and assuming, again, that because you see them, they're in your head, but actively engaging with the ideas. So sit down, again, for part one, try to write out a few definitions. For part two, just try to write a few things out. Make a list. Who are the main characters in a specific story? I find that if you write things out, it helps you remember them a little bit better. There's a few texts that may pop up that we didn't specifically discuss in class. Know the James and Howells, know the plea for romantic fiction in the basic idea of that in Frank Norris. As I was updating the notes, I realized I may have skipped over talking about that story, talking so much about McTeague. But the basic idea of plea for romantic fiction is a justification of taking the word romantic out of sentimental literature and looking at whose lives it's worth that literature can be about. So just reread that essay. It's a short piece. Make sure you know that one. Um, know the basic characteristics in which of the ways is the following text modernistic, naturalistic. Know the historical background of, what's the main issue in naturalism. And you want to talk about the environment defeating the individual. That's really basically it. If you have any specific questions about the exams, you can email me. Again, don't freak out about them. Just give yourself time to study. And I would recommend waiting until the weekend to take them. You do want to make sure they are taken by midnight or 11:59 Tuesday night, because but that's November 10th. That's a week from tomorrow, so you have plenty of time. All right. Otherwise, again, tomorrow I will have comments posted on lesson 5 for you. And otherwise, we'll just move forward. Have a good week. Thank you.